My main office area is on the ground floor of my house, which is essentially the basement, meaning it gets very little light, so I need to add lots of lights, which you can see, or opt for low light accepting houseplants. And you know, whenever people do a list like this, they always list the same plants: snake plant, spider plant, peace lily, blah, blah, blah. Look, those plants are all great, and I've even got a few hanging around, but honestly, we've just heard it all before. So I wanted to give you more options than that. So I sourced some new houseplants that Redditors vouch for, or official places like the New York Botanical Garden recommend as awesome low light houseplants. Plus, I'll give you a little run over for care tips so you can ensure your plants thrive despite your goth house. Let's go. First, let's discuss living conditions here, because there's a difference between a plant surviving low light versus thriving. Basically, you want to consider the way the plant would grow in the wild if it wasn't hanging out at your place. And if you need help, check out my Plant Care 101 playlist, because I cover the origins and growing requirements for popular, rare, and unusual houseplants like the white fusion calathea, which is a prima donna, the rubber tree, and one of my favorites, the rosy calathea. Plants that are going to do well are the ones that are typically found on forest floors, but that's not completely definitive, because their growing times are just as important. A prayer plant grows in rainforests of Central and South America, so you think it would do okay in low light. However, it begins its growth season in March ahead of other plants that grow more in later spring and earlier summer. So it has access to the sun more than it would if it had waited. And let's face it, any houseplant is probably going to prefer more light than dark during its growing season. Dormancy is another story. So consider that when picking which plants are going to get stuck in your moody, windowless bathroom. Yeah. Is a space too dark for even the darkest of souls? Well, the best way to tell is, could you read a book comfortably there without straining your eyes? We're not talking about like tiny text, just your normal 12 to 14 point font. If that's a problem for you, it's a problem for the plant. That said, look, you gotta do what you gotta do. I'll cover a few signs that your plant isn't happy in the dark at the end, so stick around. But let's get to the good part. Let's get to the list. So first up, we have the non-variegated. I don't think I get this word right, but I'll say it anyways. Monstera, Adansonii. I don't know how you say it. I apologize. But as you see, like, I just got this from Orange Lake Nursery, and I will put a link to that unboxing here. As you can see, it's still a little starter plant and it needs some water, but you can see this Monstera has a very cool design to it. And I love this Monstera because it's fairly cheap and can handle some neglect, including lower light conditions. This Redditor actually mentioned they use it in a hanging basket, which is pretty cool. I never thought to do that. From Central and South America, it shares the name Swiss cheese plant with its cousin, the Monstera deliciosa. And it's also called the monkey mask plant. Okay. This Monstera can grow up to 13 feet as a vine in the wild, but will typically tap out around 3 to 5 feet as a houseplant. And a little fun fact, scientists believe that one of the reasons for the holes is to make the plant more resilient to wind. Or maybe it's speed holes. I don't know.
Hey, what are all these holes?
These are speed holes to make the car go faster.
Oh yeah, speed holes.
It typically likes anywhere from 65 to 85 degrees. It could handle 50 degrees if it has to, but it's not freeze or frost hardy, so don't get too crazy with your temperatures. Water your plant when the first 1 inch of soil feels dry to the touch, and keep it in an area that gets around 50% or more humidity. Next up is the jewel orchid, and mine is in a terrarium. I was actually surprised to see this multiple times on different threads, because I typically think of orchids as terrarium lovers, and for some reason terrarium equals light for me. I don't know, I just work here. I actually love jewel orchids because of their veining. It looks like lightning to me. There are a few types of jewel orchids, but I'm going to be speaking about the Macotes petola because that's the one I've got, and that's the one that's called the lightning jewel orchid, hence why I love it so. It's originally from Southeast Asia and is considered endangered, so please only buy it from reputable sellers. Unlike most orchids that like to grow on trees and such, these are terrestrial plants that require soil to root. It's a very popular plant for terrariums like this because it loves high humidity levels of about 85% or higher. They'll bloom in the fall when it gets a little bit colder too. One reason that these are great in lower light is because they'll fade and lose their beautiful contrast leaves while in the sun. You can mist it to keep the humidity up, but only if you've got good airflow. Otherwise, leaving water on the leaves might cause it to rot. Next up is one that I don't have, so we're just going to use some stock footage, the Dragon Wing Begonia. I've got a love-hate relationship with begonias, as in I love them and they hate me. But hope springs eternal. I've got a polka dot begonia back there. Dragon Wing Begonia stands out for its ability to handle hot and humid summers like a champ. It loves temperatures between 68 degrees Fahrenheit to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Officially known as Begonia ex hybrida, these plants typically grow about 12 to 18 inches tall and spread just as wide. Native to warm and moist places like Central and Southern Africa, the Gulf of Guinea, Venezuela, and Argentina, the Dragon Wing Begonia is perfect for hot summer climates. It's got lush foliage and these cool wing-shaped leaves that add a unique look to any garden or indoor space. They have those thick bamboo-like stems that not only look great, but also make the plant tough enough to handle less than perfect conditions. These plants are easygoing and adapt well to different environments as long as they get enough moisture and warmth. Next is another I don't have, Peacock Moss. Why doesn't anyone ever put moss on these lists? Peacock Moss is originally from southern China and known scientifically as this. It really shines when kept between 68 degrees to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature sweet spot really helps it stay vibrant and healthy. Humidity is a big deal for peacock moss, like most mosses. It loves around 50% relative humidity to keep it from drying out or getting sick. Keeping the humidity level is super important since sudden changes can stress the moss out. So make sure to keep an eye on that humidity if this is the plant you want to go for. Peacock moss likes its soil just right. Moist, but not soggy. In the wild, peacock moss usually forms a big mat of bluish fan-shaped leaves that add a really cool pop of color to any garden. It'll spread about 2 feet and grow up to 6 inches tall, making it a really great ground cover that stands out. But as a house plant, peacock moss is pretty versatile. You can use it in shady garden spots, containers, hanging baskets, or terrariums. It's a popular choice for indoor gardeners because it stays low and spreads out with those lovely blue-green leaves. Next, we've got the nerve plant. Like the jewel orchid, these cool veins make this plant stand out, and it is a super hardy, idiot-proof plant to have. Nerve plants, aka Phytonia albivinis, feel right at home around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but they're pretty flexible and can handle anything from the low 60s to the low 80s. Keeping things steady is key because sudden changes can really stress them out, so try to avoid putting them in our drafts or air conditioning events. These plants love humidity, just like the tropical rainforests they come from. Aim for humidity levels between about 60 and all the way up to 90%. You can give them regular misting or place them in a humid spot like a bathroom. Another trick is to set the plant on a tray with pebbles and water, making sure the plant isn't sitting in the water. This setup creates a little bit of like a humidity zone around the plant, replicating its natural environment. Nerve plants are a bit dramatic if they dry out, so keep their soil consistently moist. Water thoroughly when needed, but avoid letting the soil get too dry or too soggy. A balanced watering schedule is your best bet. Check the top layer of soil regularly to see if it's time to water. Stick with room temperature water to avoid shocking them. Nerve plants can grow between 6 to 30 inches-ish in their native tropical rainforests of South America. They get all the warmth, humidity, and diffused light they need to flourish there. But indoors, they'll grow to about 3 to 6 inches tall with a trailing spread of about 12 to 18 inches. They're perfect for small spaces and terrariums thanks to their compact design, their vibrant, really cool colors that, can add like a touch of rainforest to your home. Next is the Staghorn Fern. I love ferns, but they never survive my care for very long. However, maybe now that I've got mini greenhouses here, I may be able to finally get humidity levels that they like. The Staghorn Fern hails from tropical regions like Africa, Australia, and Southeast Asia. It's an epiphyte, meaning it grows on other trees and gets its nutrients from the air and water around it. These ferns typically love bright indirect light light, making them perfect for indoor settings, but they can handle medium light. When it comes to watering, Staghorn ferns like their potting medium on the drier side. It's important to soak the leaves and crest to keep them hydrated though. Humidity is key for their care since they absorb water through their fronds. In the wild, Staghorn ferns can grow up to 3 feet across, but as houseplants, they grow to about 1 to 3 feet tall, making them really cool standout in your home. Next is the zebra Haworthia. I was super surprised to find people mentioning this. I've always put mine in bright light because I think succulent means sun, but hey, it's worth a shot. Zebra Haworthia, aka Haworthia fasciata, thrives in medium to low light, which makes it perfect for indoor settings. But if you want its colors to really pop, put it in a spot with plenty of natural light, like a south or east-facing windowsill. Watering zebra Haworthia can be a bit tricky. Overwatering can cause root rot, while underwatering can make the leaves drop. A good rule of thumb is to water the plant generously until water drains out of the container. Then let the soil dry out completely before watering again. Zebra Haworthia doesn't need any special humidity conditions and generally does well in average indoor humidity. Just make sure not to keep it too moist to avoid root rot and fungal issues. In the wild, zebra Haworthia grows slowly and can reach up to 5 to 8 inches tall, often surviving in harsh conditions buried in sand. When kept as a houseplant, it does stay small, which is great for indoor spaces. Plus, it has cute little pups that it will offset that and separate and have them grow in their own spaces. This is actually a pup. I have one of these, is the mother plant over there. I don't know which one. Next up is a plant called the fairy washboard. What a weird name, right? But what are you gonna do? I don't name these, it's not my job. Now, I've never heard of this before, so I did a little digging and found out it's an excellent houseplant for beginners because it stays pretty small and isn't fussy about humidity, which I think is always key. The fairy washboard, also known as Haworthiopsis limifolia, comes from southern Africa. For this little plant to thrive and show off its blooms, try to keep the temperature between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, about like 18 to 24 degrees Celsius. It's super laid back when it comes to humidity. No need to mist it or crank up a humidifier as it honestly prefers lower humidity levels. This cute little succulent generally grows about 4 to 6 inches in both height and width. It'll form a neat little rosette with new leaves popping up from the center. One thing to remember is that fairy washboards are fairly sensitive to wet soil, so you'll want to use a potting mix that drains well. Think about adding perlite or vermiculite for better drainage, along with some organic matter for extra nutrition. When you water, make sure you do it thoroughly so water runs out of the drainage hole, and then let the soil dry out completely before watering again. Fairy washboards grow slowly and don't really need any extra fertilizer. Just a yearly repotting will honestly give them all the nutrition they need. Next up is the Cape Primrose. That's right, a flowering plant is on this list. Well, I guess the jewel orchid and begonias could flower. Okay, whatever. The Cape Primrose, also known as Streptocarpus, hails from sunny South Africa. This pretty plant belongs to this family, I'm not going to try to pronounce, and is famous for its colorful, delicate flowers. When it comes to watering, consistency is key. Keep the soil moist but not soggy. Water them when the top inch of soil feels dry. Be sure to water thoroughly and let the extra water drain out of the pot. They thrive in high humidity, much like their native tropical habitats. Aim for humidity levels between 50 to 70% to keep them happy and blooming. One of the reasons the Cape Primrose is so great for low light conditions is because it will scorch its leaves under direct bright light. In the wilds of South Africa, Cape Primroses grow between 12 to 18 inches tall, and they can reach similar heights when kept as houseplants. Their clusters of colorful flowers on long stems, honestly, they brighten up any space. These plants are really popular for their long-lasting and impressive blooms, making them a beautiful addition to any room. Next is the Moth Orchid. Hey, another orchid. The Moth Orchid is a real gem when it comes to houseplants. These beauties hail from southeastern parts of Australia. These orchids are pretty chill and thrive in average indoor temperatures, somewhere between 65 to like 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Basically, if you're comfy, they are too. Plus, they love a bit of humidity. Aim for about 50 to 70%. Watering these guys though is key. They like regular moisture but hate being overwatered. In the summer, a once a week watering routine should do the trick, but come winter, you can stretch it to every 2 to 3 weeks. Just make sure their roots dry out between waterings to avoid any nasty root rot. you'll notice moth orchids typically have short stems with broad, like leathery-like leaves. The flower spikes grow from the base and can produce several long blooms. Depending on the species and how they're grown, they can reach anywhere from 1 to 3 feet in height. With their really cool, gorgeous, colorful flowers, it's no wonder that these are such a popular pick. Next is the lady slipper orchid. Like, look, I've just been ignorant about orchids apparently. I had no idea that they could handle such great low light conditions. The lady slipper orchid is a pretty cool plant that's originally from the tropical areas of Asia. These orchids can grow on the ground, on other plants, or even on rocks. And some of them do just fine with low light and can handle a bit of shade. It died. These orchids like it when the temperature is between 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and they can deal with a range of temperatures, but they should be kept away from extreme cold or heat to stay healthy. They love high humidity. Around like 60% is perfect. And again, if you need to, you can put them on a tray of pebbles with water to up the humidity around their area. Keep their soil consistently moist. It shouldn't be soggy, but definitely don't let it dry out either. Overwatering can cause root rot, so it's really all about finding that sweet spot. Depending on the species, lady slipper orchids can grow up to 24 inches tall, although when kept as houseplants, they typically reach about 1 to 1.5 feet, so like 12 to 18 inches. Their flowers are super showy with these unique slipper-shaped lower pouch, which is why they're such a hit as indoor plants. Next is the Philodendron Plowmanii. Check out those leaves. Native to South America, this plant is named for the ethnobotanist Timothy Plowman. Plowman. Officially, it doesn't have a botanical name yet because it was first grouped with its buddy, the Philodendron Plowmanii. What's really cool about the Plowmanii is that when it's young, its leaves have this awesome silver iridescence. And as it matures, the leaves change to shades of yellow and green. In the wild, it can grow up to 30 feet tall, towering above you with its majestic presence. However, as a houseplant, it'll max out around 8 feet, making it manageable but still impressive. For temperature, it's pretty standard for houseplants. Keep it between 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It is important to watch out if it goes below 55 degrees, as temperatures much lower than this can be detrimental to the plant's health. Keeping a consistent environment will ensure your Plowmanii thrives. Humidity-wise, aim for about 60%. However, if you bump it up to 80%, this plant will absolutely love you because it is a humidity lover. Providing that extra moisture will make a noticeable difference in its vigor and its growth. As for watering, just give it a drink once like the top inch of soil feels dry to the touch. Regularly checking the soil moisture will help you avoid both underwatering and overwatering, which are common issues for many houseplants. Next is the Philodendron 69686. Yeah, I know, it sounds like the name of a distant planet or something. Here's the thing, the 69686 comes from the Missouri Botanical Gardens and is just a research name. Despite what you might have heard, it is definitely not the local zip code. This philodendron is shrouded in a bit of mystery. A lot of folks think it's a natural hybrid from Brazil, sporting some very cool elongated leaves. It stays on the smaller side, growing up to about 2 feet tall. But those leaves, they need a lot of room to spread out. The leaves of the Philodendron 69686 are not just elongated, but also quite striking in their appearance, making it a unique addition to any plant collection. To keep your 69686 healthy, use well-draining soil and make sure it stays moist but not soaking wet. It is prone to root rot, so monitoring its water levels is super important. In addition to well-draining soil, providing the plant with balanced, water-soluble fertilizer every few weeks can promote healthy growth. I can't ever say soluble. It's also beneficial to wipe the leaves down occasionally to remove dust and help the plant breathe better. Remember, even though it is a smaller plant, it appreciates a bit of space to allow its leaves to stretch out. This makes it perfect for a tabletop or an office shelf where it can be both admired for the beauty it is and allowed to grow comfortably. The Philodendron 69686 is not just a plant, it's a conversation starter and a piece of natural art. And, you know, a testament to the wonders of botanical diversity and also a mystery. Finally, we have dark Anthuriums. I kind of grouped Anthuriums together because, well, I don't really have an excuse. Also, there are about 1,000 species, so, you know, take your pick. But look at this Redditor's picture. Bam! It's so goth. Anthuriums are quite versatile and can be grown indoors with the right care, making them an excellent choice for plant enthusiasts who don't really have access to high light conditions. Native to Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, in their natural habitat, Anthuriums thrive by attaching themselves to trees, benefiting from the filtered light that makes its way through the canopy. But they're not a parasitic plant. They don't harm the trees they attach to. They're mostly just along for the ride. On average, they'll grow up to 3 feet if they're happy. For care requirements, it's important to know that these are not able to handle overwatering, so let the soil dry out between waterings and make sure both the pot and soil have good drainage. They'll also do best in temperatures between 60 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit and want high humidity, so shoot for at least 60%. Dark Anthuriums have a dramatic and captivating appearance that makes them particularly appealing to those who enjoy a more goth aesthetic like myself. Now, despite my light telling me it's time to take a break, I want to talk to you about some things you'll need to consider as a trade-off to having plants like these live in darker spots of your home or office. If this gets extreme, you'll probably want to move it to a brighter spot. One, they'll probably lose variegation because they'll need any surface area possible for photosynthesis. Variegation, which refers to unique patterns of colors on leaves, can fade over time as plants adapt to lower light conditions. The leaves may become more uniformly green in an effort to maximize their ability to capture light. Next, along those lines, their colors will probably fade for the same reason. In low light, plants prioritize producing more chlorophyll, which gives their leaves a greener color, over maintaining vibrant hues that make them so attractive. This means that deep greens, reds, and purples may become less intense, making the plant appear less vibrant overall. Next, your plant may get leggy. Some plants, like Chinese evergreens, naturally tend to get leggy and keep their leaves on top. However, most plants strive for a bit of bushiness to improve their chances of getting the most sun possible. In low light conditions, plants may stretch out and grow longer stems with fewer leaves in an attempt to reach any available light source. Also, it's probably not going to flower. Could it? Sure, but it probably won't. The likelihood of your plant flowering in low light is very slim. While it's technically possible for some plants to produce flowers in suboptimal conditions, the energy required for flowering is usually conserved for survival when light is scarce, which means you're less likely to see blooms. Basically, look, while these plants can handle low light conditions, they may not thrive or display their full potential in terms of color, structure, and flowering. Regularly monitoring their health and being ready to adjust their environment if you need to can really help mitigate some of these issues. But let's say you can't move it to another spot for whatever reason. It's okay, I got you. Because in this video, I show you one of the best grow lights you can get that is probably not being sold in the plant care aisle. Thanks for watching. I'll see you over there.